Anansi does the impossible. Ta-da! Wow, a lot of pages. Ta-da! Long, long ago, when the earth was set down and the sky was lifted up, all folk tales were owned by the sky god. One day, Anansi the spider said to his wife, Aso, "It is wrong that the tales our storytellers have told for generations belong to the sky god. I am going to buy them for our earth people." Aso said, "Do you really think you can bargain with anyone so powerful?" Anansi, "I fear you are taking a morsel too big to fit your mouth." "Well, we shall see," said Anansi, and the very next day he went to the sky god. Puffing out his chest, he said, "Your Excellency, I have come to buy your stories." The sky god beat his thunder. Tum, tum, tum. Whoa, he bellowed. "What makes you think you can buy them? Kings have tried and failed, and you are not even a man. What would you want in exchange for them?" asked Anansi. The sky god rubbed his great chin. At last he said, "The price is 3 impossible tasks. Bring me a live python, a real fairy, and 47 stinging hornets." "I can manage that," said Anansi. Then he hurried straight home to Aso. You following me?
Yes, right behind you.
Anansi told her, "I have to pay a live python, a real fairy, and 47 stinging hornets for the stories. However, can I manage that?" Aso thought and thought. Finally, she said, "I know how to begin." And she whispered into Anansi's ear. Anansi chuckled. Go. At once, he ran with Aso to a nearby river. There they sat on a log and waited. Tum, 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 tum. Presently, a python came slithering, whoosh, 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 down to the water to drink. Anansi said in a loud voice, "It is longer than he is." "Not longer," shouted Aso. "Maybe just as long, but not longer." They were conjuring up something in their head. The big snake raised his head. "What are you two arguing about?" he asked. "I say the log we're sitting on is longer than you are," Anansi answered. "But my wife said it is not." "Shh, hiss," the python. "This small thing, I know I am longer. I feel longer." "Well," said Anansi, "you look shorter to me." Remember, Anansi is a trickster. "I'll show you," said the python. He lay down on the log, putting his nose even with one end of it. "Your tail is too short," said Anansi. And ripped, he gave the tail a pull. "No, my nose is too short," cried the python, and he wriggled back to the end of the log. "I know what to do," said Aso. "Tie his tail to the other end, then he can make himself longer." Anansi took a long bush rope and began winding it around the snake's tail on the log. Kapoom, kapoom, kapoom. The python tried to make himself longer. He stretched and stretched, grunting. Meanwhile, Anansi kept winding until he wound the rope all the way up to the python's head. When he had the snake tied tight, he cried, "You foolish python, you let me catch you. Now I am going to take you to the sky god." And off he went, dragging the python behind him. When Anansi gave the huge snake to the sky god, his scroll darkened the sun. He said, "It is true, you have brought me the python, but you have yet to bring me a real fairy and 7 stinging hornets." Anansi went home to Aso and asked, "Oh, are we going to catch a fairy?" Aso thought and thought. Finally, she said, "I know how." And she whispered to Anansi. Anansi laughed as Aso had suggested. He carved a wooden fairy and covered it with sticky gum from a mimosa tree and put a tiny dish of banana fufu in its hand. When the moon was bright, Anansi took the make-believe fairy to the odom tree where the fairies liked to play. He tied a long string to the wooden fairy's back and another to its head. Then, clutching the ends of the strings, he hid behind some bushes. Anansi is very devious. Presently, some fairies came tripping to the odom tree. They danced around it, lip, 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 and one of them cried in a tingling voice, "Look! Here is a stranger. She has a dish of fufu." The fairy sister smacked her small lips. "Ask her to give us some," she said. So the first fairy asked, "Kind stranger, may I please have a taste of your fufu?" Anansi pulled one string and the doll nodded its head. The fairy took a tiny taste. "Ooh," she said, "your fufu is delicious, thank you." The wooden fairy said nothing. "Look," said the first fairy, "I told her thank you, yet she doesn't answer me." "Slap her spanking place," said the sister. The first fairy hit hard. "Pa!" Her hand stuck. Let me go, she cried. The sister said, "Hit her again, that will teach her to let me go." The first fairy struck the doll with her other hand. Pa! And that stuck too. Quickly, Anansi pulled the strings. Now the doll with the fairy attached came bumping over to him. "Kaparti, kaparti, kaparti. How can a measly creature like you perform these impossible tasks?" But then he added, "I admit that the python and the fairy are here. Still, you have not brought me the 47 hornets." Anansi ran home to Aso and asked, "Oh, are we going to catch 47 hornets?" Aso thought and thought. Finally, she said, "I know how," and she whispered to Anansi. Anansi laughed. As Aso had suggested, he plucked a bottle-shaped ground gourd from a calabash tree, whittled a wooden cord for it, and filled it with water from the river. Next, he found a hornet's nest in a bush. Climbing high up a nearby tree, he tipped the bottle and ran and let the water gurgle, 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 down upon the hornets. "My brothers," called Anansi, "do you want a better shelter? See, in the calabash, you will be safe and dry." He held out the empty gourd. The hornets buzzed around it. One flew in, then another, then another. When Anansi had counted 47 of them, he popped the stopper in. "Little hornets," he said, "I am going to take you to the sky god," and off he went. Interesting so far. The sky god saw Anansi coming. At once, he flashed his lightning. Wee, 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 and beat his thunder. Dum, dum, dum. Holding out the buzzing gourd, Anansi said, "I am here. And here are the 47 stinging hornets. Do you want to count them? No, cried the sky god. He threw up his hands in resignation and said, Anansi, you have paid the price. The live python, the real fairy, and the 47 stinging hornets are mine. From now on, the stories belong to you. Anansi thanked the sky god, then he hurried home. That night, the people of the village gathered inside a circle of fire for storytelling, and Anansi told how he and Aso had managed to buy the sky god stories. The people rejoiced, chanting, honor to Anansi, honor to Aso, honor to Anansi and Aso. And from that day to this, the folk stories of West Africa have been called Anansi tales.